We're here today with Dave Chalker, designer of Thief's Market and Get Bit.
Welcome to Design Diary, the podcast where you get to look inside my board game design notebook as well as what's going on inside my head. We look at a new word each day from the sense of mechanics, tone, theme, or inspiration for a full game. Today's word is
pooh-bah, a person holding many public or private offices, a person in high position or of great influence. Pooh-bah. So Dave, what do you got for this?
So I actually went to the Wikipedia entry for Grand Pooh-bah because that was the first thing that kind of hit me.
Just a Flintstones picture?
Oh, that's the thing. Like, it actually, apparently Flintstones took it from Gilbert and Sullivan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and when you add Grand onto the front, it adds a level of
copyright
self-importance. Well, yeah, that too, but it's less. So, like the definition we looked at is more just kind of general, somebody who's important.
Yeah, of course.
But Grand Pooh-bah suddenly becomes like more ironic in a way.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I love and the one definition I have says Samuel Goldwyn. This is like the example. Samuel Goldwyn was so impressed with the film, he sent a fan letter to Paramount's Grand Pooh-bah, Barney Balaban. So there apparently was a Grand Pooh-bah at Paramount, and I don't know how close Paramount was to Flint. I don't know who owns what.
Right.
But I do love that. I just love that.
Yeah. So design-wise, it kind of took me down this road of partially down like worker placement kind of stuff.
Okay.
But like, you know, a lot of these games in kind of like the meta theme that they don't really go into, it's like the player is the Grand Pooh-bah in a way.
Yeah.
Because you're the one telling all the meeples where to go on the board on any given turn.
Yeah, I guess if you like step back a little bit, it is definitely that on almost every game. It's neat.
Right. But if you kind of drill into that direction, it's like there's no actual scenario where like the boss both gets 100% out of the workers that he's bossing around, right?
Yeah.
Like they're not always going to completely follow your orders. And in fact, in some cases, like if you micromanaged a worker too much, you know, it kind of backfires on you.
Yeah, that just made me think, is there anything where like taking the word worker placement, where you fire one of your workers? Like, is there anything that does that?
Yeah, I've seen prototypes that have kind of gotten around that idea, but I've never seen it really fully executed.
Nobody's ever gotten it.
Yeah. Or, you know, it's kind of a depressing theme when you think about it in some ways.
Yeah. Well, the word that I had for today was lugubrious, which is mournful, full of sorrow. It's exaggeratingly mournful, and just on Board Game Geek, I've been having people like chime in with their thoughts, and all of them just go very depressing. I'm like, my whole thing is slap fantasy on it, and suddenly it's not depressing anymore.
It's true. So in this case, you'd have to be like the goblins that you're firing from the tinkering workshop,
exactly,
or something to make it less sad.
Yeah.
Rather than you're the office worker that you have to fire.
Yeah, who has a family.
Right, exactly. And like they're depicted on the card, like the family of the people you're firing.
Now, I just saw a game. I forget who designed it. I know it was oh my god, why can't I think of who it is? Michael used to do a podcast from England. Why can't I remember his last name? Used to work for Game Salute. Anyway, Michael. But he designed a game that has a really deep, like, real life theme where I can't remember if it was somebody was sick or it was a breakup or something, but it was one of those, you could see it in the art and you could see the emotion in it. And that's one of those things that if you can nail it from an artistic level, it's amazing. But it's just hard. It's just really hard. Like Fog of Love. Like, I haven't played that.
Oh yeah, I'm super interested in trying that at some point.
Yeah.
If I go on a slight tangent, because it just reminded me.
Yeah.
Well, one of my very first like attempts at a full game design was when I was in college as an undergrad, and I took all these hippie school classes because that's kind of where I was.
Yeah.
And one of them, the class was called Land and Struggle, and we had to do a final report in groups on Zimbabwe.
Okay.
And the professors were like, well, it can't just be a paper. You've got to do something, that's interactive and this, that, and the other. And, we really encourage you to think out of the box. And initially we were going to do like a website. And then when we were talking with all the other groups, became clear that every single other group was also doing a website. So I was like, why don't we do a board game instead? And totally got my, my group down with that idea. And we did all this research about like the land in Zimbabwe and, classic like resource style, like which parts of Zimbabwe are like better for farming and have these resources and whatnot, and kind of incorporated that all in. And, the good news is we were the only group not doing a website during the final presentation. The bad news is like we got panned for like, quote unquote, not taking the situation in Zimbabwe seriously.
Oh, of course, you brought the children's game into the mix.
Right, exactly. So it was kind of an early lesson on theme in a number of ways.
Meanwhile, like you make that game and it's published, and no kids will have anything to do with it. It'll be that heavy Euro game that is appreciated by people, unlike the teacher, I assume.
Yeah, I think the ultimate point was like that. I think at the time it was more like games can't tackle a subject this serious.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure as like, sophomores, we didn't really give it the full framing that it really should have. But still, I don't know. It kind of stuck with me a bit.
Yeah, we made a game in one of my classes, and I just remember it being so terrible, but we fought over who got to take it home. That was the big thing. It was just stupid, unplayable, and dumb, but we all wanted to keep it.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, I sort of thought of this word for just briefly, because I consider these weekend ones my break from my design diary, but I do think of them just a little bit. And I really just kept thinking about those games. Like, have you ever played like the who made it? Junta, the newer version.
Mm-hmm. I haven't played the new one.
Okay, I don't know what the old one was like, but basically it's the kind of game where you where one player is kind of in charge and calling the shots, and you're kind of voted into that position, and you're giving money out to all different players face down. They look at it. They put it back down, and at the end of the round, they decide whether they want to keep you in office or whatever your position is, or vote you out. And I kind of think of those games where you have the grand pooh-bah, and somebody's just kind of calling those shots, but trying to stay in that position without upsetting everybody else, or by sneaking them a couple dollars here and there.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where you kind of have to have different goals. That like the object of the game is not to be the grand pooh-bah, but it is a part of the game,
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely a point where you want to shift out of that. Mm-hmm. And, because you can, I guess you have more control when you are that, but you can gain more victory points when you're not that, or something along those lines. Yeah, but
there are different goals along those lines of, there's responsibility that comes with it, and, that might factor in some other way.
Yeah, exactly. I like a lot of games like that where with just that shift. It's fun, and it's sort of asymmetrical, but not asymmetrical. Like there's an asymmetrical role, and it touches on that one versus many, but you're sort of with them. Like I love that blend, and then it gets very social.
Yeah, and it's also easier to self-balance in that way, where it's both not attack the leader because you're involved in selecting the leader, but it's also not we started out with these different things. It's part of the strategy is someone getting into this role.
Yeah, that's cool. There was a game that I made years ago that I don't remember a lot about, and it never made it past like a prototype that I made that cost me way too much money. But it was my favorite thing about it was a pulling dice from a bag and rolling. And it was all about voting, and you're trying to vote somebody into office, and the person in the office was the one who got to pull and got to choose some of the dice that they roll and things like that. But what it was you had a a die for every player, and then that was who you were voting into office this turn, was the die that you put in, and then the results. I don't remember what the results were. I guess the results of the die roll determined if the person shifted out of office or like how they fell on the spectrum, like if they went into the main office or if they went below or whatever. It doesn't matter about any of it. It just had a cool name, and it was Democracy. And that was like,
wow.
That was my that was my fuel for building that game, was this name that I went out and bought all these different colored dice so it could play up to 8 players, and you had to have one of every color, and it just disappeared because, one, I didn't have enough people to play test. But Democracy still lives with me. I love that name.
That is a great title. Yeah, I was going to say you had designed Junta the dice game, or Junta Dice or something. But that is a much better title.
Yeah, Junta was probably an inspiration. It was probably right when I got that.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty funny. So the one thing that I wanted to mention was that where we met each other, or kind of where I found you before you knew who I was years and years ago. You designed Get Bit. When was that? 2009?
The original,
or even before
kind
that?
of super almost self-published run was in 2007.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the first published one was Robot Martini. Was that what the name was?
That was the one.
And that was the first published one.
Mm-hmm.
So I still have that version. And it was funny because I knew about it from something completely outside of board games, and it was that I was a huge fan of Palisades Toys and the guys that worked there, and I started working with them on I did some web stuff for them, and I got some like credits on some of their Muppet toys just for like reference stuff, and just like probably just being a fanboy more than anything. But I remember they made these little figures, and they were called Pals, and they were just these block figures, and it was really early in the block figure thing that took off for years after that. And then I saw that there was this board game coming out with it, and it was Get Bit, where the sharks bite the characters and you pull them apart, and it used the mold for the same block figures.
Yep.
So like I would play with my X-Files characters instead of, or they were Die Hard ones. They were just all kinds of cool ones. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I would play with them. And I'd be so gentle with them so they didn't break. And I'm still the same way with the ones that come with it. I'm just so gentle with them. Just being a toy collector, I know how things can snap, and I'll cry about it.
Right.
But no, I found out about that, and it's such a cool connection.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't realized you had actually worked with those guys.
Yeah, I should show you. I did I don't know if our things got the parental levels, but the guy that created the character, the figures, I hooked up with a guy that created the art for a whole line they were called Cock Blockers, and they were it was the block figure line of all these just like terrible characters, kind of like Garbage Pail Kids, like that kind of potty humor, but one step above it from an adult level. And I did like the website for it, and I made all these like samples of the characters, and it was right around that same time that this was probably right when my daughter was born, 2007. So it was right. I was like really deep into it then. And now the guy that made those cock blockers did the artwork for Twin Stars for me, and like it's like such a weird, like everybody's connected.
Small world kind of stuff. Yeah. So I was working with a guy at the time who worked for Palisades, and so some of those early Get Bit prototypes, once I had decided that once like the game didn't start that way using those kinds of figures, they were just like pawns with little tokens and stuff, and at some point I went, oh, I should use something that you tear the limbs off, and so I have some of those like Die Hard and Buffy figures somewhere, but initially part of the talks were, okay, we've got this mold for these articulated figures, we're going to use those, but it was a lot more expensive to put any kind of actual paint on them, because we really wanted to have they'd have faces and stuff, and it was just so much cheaper to just do like solid color plastic for each of them, and so that's the way we eventually went with that.
And then eventually there were ones with paint on them, the pirate one, right?
Yeah, so those are stickers.
Oh, they're stickers. Okay.
Yep. When Mayday picked it up a few years later, and one of the deluxe editions that they did started including stickers, so it kind of wrapped back around, but they're still not like like those old figures were spray painted on and everything.
Yeah, I was involved in the discussions in creating that Cockblockers line, and part of it was it's not even the paint, it's the molds that will section off like screen printing. It's like the molds were like, I don't even remember, it was like $10,000 or something just for the line of the first 6 characters. So, the mold for the character was one thing, but then the molds just for the paint ops was a ton. And there was things where it's just like, all right, well, now we just got to cut the colors down to half as many colors. And then, from there, it was just like, now they look half as good,
right?
Things like that. So,
and those license figures like needed a hairpiece, to be able to give Dana Scully her hair and stuff, and that's like another mold.
I am pulling them out tonight. I love those figures. They're my favorite.
Yep.
Well, that's cool. That goes way back, and I remember just the Robot Martini box was just like this cool, like it was just different than every other game I had at the time, and that's the version I still have, so it's fun.
That's the version that does not have a shark in it, so
yeah, you're right.
It's kind of a collector's item.
But we had the Lego shark, so it worked out.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I totally missed getting your contact info because we were just chatting, so tell everybody where they can get in touch with you.
Best place to find me is on Twitter at Dave the Game, and I post big things on my not very often updated website, critical-hits.com.
Cool. Well, this was a lot of fun, so I'm glad you got to join me, and we'll do it again.
Yep, sounds good to me.
All right, thanks.